Hello, my friends. Today we'll start with the fact that President Zelenskyy commented on the results of the trilateral talks and said that there are still many disputed issues and that Ukraine will not give up its territory. We have many problematic issues. My position on territories remains unchanged, Zelensky said about the talks with Russia. For a long time now, Russia's goal has been to ensure that Ukraine is not present in the eastern part of the country. That has been their goal and they want to achieve it. They cannot achieve it on the battlefield. Everyone knows our position on territorial issues. All of this indicates that Russia will continue the war. As they have repeatedly stated, they intend to achieve their goals by military means. It's worth recalling that to gain full control over the entire Donetsk region, Russian forces still need to capture about 20%. So far, there have been no major breakthroughs in this section of the front, although the situation remains extremely difficult. At the same time, it's very important to note that the Russians carried out a drone strike on Kropyvnytskyi and managed to destroy Ukrainian helicopters. Yesterday, for the first time, Russia used Shahed drones controlled via Starlink. The Russians struck helicopters in the Kropyvnytskyi area, said Serhiy Flash. And the footage shows automatic target acquisition and manual guidance via a visual channel. At the same time, there were no unmanned aerial vehicles in the area that could have provided a mesh radio network. These drones were manually controlled and flew at extremely low altitude, almost hugging the ground, to avoid radar detection. As we can see, the Russians are improving the capabilities and are trying to weaken the Ukrainian forces. But Zelensky also said that he hopes Ukraine's partners will not ease the pressure on Russia.
We talked about our diplomatic work with our partners, first and foremost with the United States. I briefly informed Gatanas and Carol about the talks that took place in the Emirates. I hope that America will not reduce pressure on Russia over this war for the sake of diplomacy. Europe must be just as decisive. Pressure must continue of sanctions pressure on Russia. Russian tankers transporting oil, including through the Baltic Sea, must be stopped completely. Russian ambitions, including their propaganda, must be blocked by all of us. This is a difficult task, but everyone has to do it. Russian schemes to bypass sanctions must be cut off. These are the minimum foundations needed for peace to truly be achieved.
At the same time, Ukraine continues to respond to strikes on its energy infrastructure in kind. Yesterday, shelling of the Belgorod thermal power plant was recorded. This means the exchange of strikes is ongoing. Now, let's move on to the situation along the front line and start with the Sumy direction. Here, the Russians have gone quiet for now and are not conducting new assaults, only shelling is being recorded. In the Kharkiv direction, Russian forces continue to devastate Kharkiv. As a result, the situation in the city remains extremely difficult, although no direct attacks along the front line are being recorded at the moment. In the area of Vovchansk, the Russians are assaulting Staritsa and Vovchansky Hutory, but over the past day they haven't managed to advance further. The Ukrainian forces are trying to hold the defense as much as possible, but the situation here is gradually worsening. Along the border, the Russians are assaulting Krukhle, and Russian forces have already entered the village of Nesterne. The Ukrainian forces are releasing videos showing how Russian troops are being destroyed there. Destruction of Russian forward position in the Nesterne, Vovchansk direction. The fact that the Russians have begun to infiltrate Nesterne confirms their prior consolidation in the area near the settlement. All of this further confirms that the situation here is deteriorating. In the direction of Veliki Burluk, the Russians are assaulting Chuhudnivka, but so far they have been unable to advance further, and there have been no changes over the past day. In the Kupiansk direction, the Russians are unable to regain the initiative and are carrying out several assaults on Peshane and Kurylivka. However, the Ukrainian forces are successfully repelling these attacks, and there are no changes along the front line. In the direction of Borova, the Russians are assaulting Druzhelyubivka. Here as well, activity remains minimal and the front line is unchanged. In the Liman direction, the situation is more difficult despite the fact that Russian forces have reduced the activity for now. They are breaking through near Zarychne and assaulting Drobosheva. Ukrainian soldiers report that the situation is extremely tense and that the front line is on the verge of a breakthrough. There are a huge number of drones on both sides, and all positions are being hit daily. Because of this, how long the defense can still be held here is a big question. For now, however, there have been no changes over the past day. In the Slovyansk direction, the Russians are pushing through near Svyatopokrovsk area and storming Nikiforivka. They carried out several attacks over the past day, but achieved no success. In effect, the front line here has been stabilized, and there are no new breakthroughs. In the Kramatorsk direction, the Russians are assaulting Orikhovo-Vasilievka, Minkivka, and Markove. They also continue shelling Drushkivka and periodically striking Kramatorsk itself. However, there have been no changes along the front line over the past day. In the Kostantinivka direction, the Russians are attacking the outskirts of the city, Pleshiivka, Stepanivka, and pushing past Rusin Yar. So far, there have been no major changes of the past day. At the same time, Russian forces are actively trying to break into the city, and the gray zone there is expanding. In the Dobropilla direction, the Russians are maintaining high activity. They advancing across the fields toward Torske, Sultan, Sofiivka, Новий Donbass, Ivanivka, Dorozhny, Bilitske, and pushing across the fields toward the village of Shevchenko. According to the general staff, these offensive actions are officially reported, but Russian forces are still unable to secure new positions, and there have been no changes along the front line over the past day. In the Pokrovsk direction, the Russians continue assaulting Rodinske. They attacking Grishine from two sides and clearly aim to capture the village soon, which would cut off Ukrainian forces in Pokrovsk. The units remaining there would effectively be completely encircled. So far, attacks are being repelled and the Russians cannot consolidate their positions. At the same time, attacks on the western flank continue, with the Russian forces pressing the defense toward the village of Serhiivka. But there have been no changes over the past day. In the Novopavlivka direction, the Russians are assaulting Filia and Ivanivka, but activity remains low and there have been no changes over the past day. In the direction of the settlement of Pokrovsk, in the Dnipropetrovsk region, the Russians haven't launched any new assaults, only shelling has been reported, and the situation has remained unchanged over the past day. In the Huliaipole direction, heavy shelling continues. The Russians are assaulting Nove Zaporizhia and advancing past the villages of Dobropilla, Varvarivka, and Svatopetrivka. Attacks on the town of Zelenskyy have already begun, and this, friends, is very bad news. The Russians are effectively reaching the rear of the town, and in the near future, a significant withdrawal may become necessary. Fighting continues, but everything happening here indicates that the situation is catastrophic. In the Zaporizhia direction, the Russians are assaulting Primorsk, but there have been no major changes over the past day. They haven't been able to advance further, and the village remains in the gray zone. Shelling of Zaporizhia continues. In the Kherson direction, the Russians continue to carry out about one attack per day. They have had no success, and the front line remains stable. Meanwhile, China is actively advancing its drone technology. China announced the successful test of a sniper drone equipped with a rifle and capable of hitting targets at 100 meters. Human-sized objects were used as targets. It's also reported that they are testing drones with artificial intelligence. In China, drones are being trained with AI to mimic the behavior of predatory birds and animals in order to create effective swarms for combat and reconnaissance operation. Researchers at the Beijing University of Aeronautics and Astronautics modeled interactions between hawks and pigeons so that attacking drones could learn to dodge while defensive drones could identify vulnerable targets. In a 5 versus 5 test, the pigeons were destroyed in 5.3 seconds. The developments were patented in 2024 and are part of China's series of studies on swarm intelligence for military purposes. The article notes that the Chinese army uses AI to control drone swarms, robot dogs, and other autonomous systems with minimal human involvement. So all these suggests that modern wars can be extremely dangerous and human losses from drones could be very high. At the same time, political problems are emerging in China just as in Russia. Xi Jinping is purging his inner circle due to the threat of a rebellion. WSJ. According to the publication, General Zhang Yusa, a close ally of the Chinese leader, has been detained. He is allegedly suspected of sharing confidential information about China's nuclear program with the US and of abusing his power. At the same time, an investigation has been launched into Liu Zhenli, head of the Joint Staff. As the article adds, the removal of Yusa shows Xi Jinping's desire to consolidate complete power. She also fears that officers loyal to the general could raise troops in rebellion and move on Beijing. Overall, dictators try to do everything to stay in power, but friends, make sure to share your thoughts about this in the comments. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.